Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sabi Sands Private Game Reserve. We are currently on Djuma, and it's a beautiful, beautiful sunny afternoon. Brian's on camera this afternoon. I've just got back not even an hour ago from leave, and I'll tell you what, it's so good to be back in this beautiful destination that we are so lucky to drive around every day. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott, and like I said, Brian's on camera, Eugene and Nikki are in the final control room, and James and Andrew are out on another vehicle, and you'll catch up with them a little bit later, I'm sure. But for now, we are currently kind of situated in the central parts of the Djuma property, and we're making our way towards Buffelshoek Dam. Like I said, it's a very warm afternoon, and I'm hoping, because it's so dry and so warm, that we may get some luck at the waterholes. I haven't had much time to catch up with anyone really since we got back. It's less than an hour ago that Nikki and I got back to Djuma after having a wonderful break down in Cape Town for a few days. Let's see if he sticks around for us, he or she. It's a very pretty bird. Which, as you can see, has its beak open and it's panting. Just like a dog would, I guess. To keep cool, they don't sweat like we do. And it just goes to show that despite it being our winter, the middle of the day can be really sunny and warm, with much cooler, crisper mornings, and also later on in the evening the temperature will drop a lot. But for now, a lot of the animals will be seeking refuge in the shade, just like this Birchall starling. And as it hops around, you'll notice that its feathers iridesce very brightly in the sunlight. It's just flown down, but so close to the vehicle that I'm going to have to try and reverse a little bit in order to get Brian an opportunity to show it to you. I wonder what it is interested in down there. It flew so close to the vehicle. What have you found to feed on there? Looks like little termites, or possibly ants. I'm not sure. You can maybe see a little bit better than I can. I'm trying to look through my binoculars, but judging by the speed that it's consuming them, it looks like something very small. As I was saying, their feathers do iridesce beautifully in the sunlight. In dull weather, they'll look like a very dark blue color, almost black. So it can be confusing. Sorry, I keep tilting my head into the frame. And they spend a lot of time on the ground feeding. This is typically how the Birchall starlings will feed, and along with a lot of other starlings that we get in this area. They're ground feeders, and it's always interesting for me how all the different birds and animals have adapted and occupied different niches and different ways of going about getting their food. Wow, not a bad start. And for those of you who may be joining for the first time, a very, very warm welcome. And just to let you know, this is a live safari experience, so what you're seeing is happening this very, very second. And not only is it live, but it's also interactive. So if you would like to ask us questions at any given stage, please feel free to do so. In the meantime, we are just so close to it that I couldn't resist stopping for another look. And as Brian zooms in, you'll realize we don't often get close enough to be able to see this kind of quality image. you can see it's still got its beak wide open, and I can give you the exact temperatures that we're experiencing here. It's 80. To hear that Mark's left us, but I'm sure he'll be back to help out. Coming months, and despite him leaving, like I say, which is sad, it's great to have James on board with us. I don't know James very well. Look forward to getting to his. We've just got a request through from Judith. And good afternoon, Judith. Thanks so much for sending through your question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my book out, and that will help me to explain the differences between property, and this is about 200 miles, just to give you an idea of length, north-south, and east-west. It ranges from about 30 to 50 miles, depending. Now, the Birchwills is only in the southern part of the Kruger National Park, where we situated just about over there, and then as Brian pans up, you'll notice the Meave starling's only situated in this top corner of the Kruger National Park. It's such a beautiful, beautiful area, called the Porphyry Triangle, and I was lucky enough to spend a month in that area helping with training for a walking safari company where guides are trained up to get their walking qualifications. So I've seen my fair share of Meave starlings while I was up there. Good question though, Judith, and thanks very much for sending that through. Who knows, hopefully... That's not what we want. Wrong button. Sorry about that. Whoops. So that's not what we aim for. But like I say, I'm a little bit rusty. Bye. As I was saying though, before the hooter or horn for the last few months or even years, you may well know what this is, but for those of you who haven't, it does look very similar to another animal, a domesticated animal, that you may well have seen a dropping of. So think about it and send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv, or send an email through, well, that was the email, or send a tweet through to hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and that would be the same way that you would send questions, just like Judith has just sent through to us. And I don't think I mentioned that earlier. I did say it was live and interactive, but I didn't let you know how exactly to interact. So now you know. And the tracks of these animals are heading in the same direction that we're heading in. It could very well be from last night, even though the dung has dried over. And that's because it is very hot and dry at this time of the year. Now, depending on what we bump into along the way, we should hopefully be at a local waterhole in the next 10 minutes or so. And I'm really interested to see who could be there. It's impossible to guess, but I think at this time of the year and at this time of the day, the waterholes are one of the better places to hopefully see some kind of action. because a lot of the animals who come to drink will prefer to come and drink in the heat of the day when it's light, and obviously when it's most hot and when they're most thirsty. It also makes more sense to be in full sunlight, as it's safer for the animals drinking, whereas as soon as darkness falls, it becomes a lot more treacherous heading down to waterholes to drink. We've got a little tree squirrel in the road. It could well just dart off like it's doing, or it could have come and foraged through some of the elephant dung that's lying in the road, and you'll see a few scatterings of dried grass on the left. Those are old boluses of elephant dung that have been broken up by various animals. So Brian's going to show you that's what they come out looking like. But then once squirrels and birds have rummaged through them for any little snacks or treats that they can find, it becomes a flattened pile of vegetation. The squirrel would have been looking for old marilla seeds that would have passed through the elephant's stomach. But the elephant would have only absorbed some of the juices from the fruity flesh and wouldn't have cracked into the seed and been able to get to the nut, which the squirrel then searches for. And the squirrels will still be searching for nuts to keep them going through the winter months. It was quite incredible having been in a beautiful city this morning called Cape Town, which is where Nikki and I spent our leave, and just a few hours of flying and travel, you can be in such a very different environment with so many different animals like this one. Now, this doesn't happen very often. They don't often stick around for us, so I hope you're enjoying the view of this slender mongoose. And they've got a very long tail that is often upturned, which is one of their characteristic features that you can see now. They've also got a very slight yellowy tinge. You can hear some francolin in the grass rustling to the right of it. Prey a little bit too big for the mongoose, but they can sometimes surprise you in what they feed on. It's mainly small rodents and invertebrates. Let's see what these francolin do, because it was heading straight towards them, so the francolin could erupt out at any moment. Or let's see what happens here. Okay, well, like I said, the francolins were just in the bush there, and it would be really interesting to see. Okay, well, we've got 3 answers through for the dung so far. Sadly, all of them are wrong. There was, I think, James that may have said lion or zebra, but there was lion, zebra, and cow patty. Now, the cow patty is the closest one, and I'll put all of you out of your misery. It was buffalo dung, so very similar to a cow, yes, and well done to whoever it was that sent that through. I didn't quite catch your name. For the lion and zebra, difficult to tell from where you are, just from zooming in on the camera. It could have been lion, but lion is almost more dog-like and individual pieces, whereas that was clearly a pat. And zebra actually have kidney-shaped pellets, and again, not just a big flat pat. So I'll point out some more a little bit later, and that way we'll all be able to work out the differences between the dung of the various animals, and it's something that's so important for us to know where animals are moving by being able to see all these different signs that are left for us. Well, the mongoose obviously slunk off without interfering with the Franklin's day, and we'll therefore continue. And while we continue making our way towards Buffelshoek Dam, I think it'll be a good opportunity for you to cross over to James and Andrew and see what they've been up to this afternoon. We'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Hi everyone, welcome to the afternoon game drive. It's about 573 degrees in the sun today, so excuse my sunglasses. I'm not trying to be rude. It's a beautiful day though, and it has been the whole day. We're out here looking at the moment at, well, we were looking at them and we're hopefully going to find them for you again. A little herd of kudu and a herd of nyala. Now, we had a long discussion yesterday about the tragelaphid or spiral-horned antelope, and both of them are part of the tragelaphus family and or genus, and they can live together like this. There we've got a nyala coming into picture now, and they can live with kudu because they don't actually compete. Kudu generally eat much higher in the stratum, and nyala lower down. Almost grazing, the nyala do sometimes on the forbs. And a forb is a sort of grass, not a grass, is a herbaceous plant that grows close to the ground but isn't in fact a grass. So they don't necessarily compete with each other. Both of them browse almost exclusively, and there are also a whole lot of impala around here. And impala are quite interesting feeders. I'm just going to sneak forward, see if we can't get a view. And they've all seemed to have run off into the shade. Alright, we're going to carry on. We're on our way to a dam up ahead called Twin Dams. I'm not sure why it's called Twin Dams. I've only seen one there. But the impala have an amazing feeding strategy. They're able to browse and graze, so they're what we call mixed feeders, which is quite unusual. There are not many animals that are able to do it. Yes, kudu will sometimes take fresh grass, and so will bushbuck, and so will nyala, but mostly those three animals will browse, whereas impala will take whatever is freshest. And their limiting factor for impala is water. And so in areas where there is plentiful water, impala will almost always be the most numerous antelope. They also have a spectacularly clever breeding strategy, and it's relevant to this time of the year because in the Kruger region they breed during the dark phase of the moon in May. Now, I'm just going to get Andrew to point up there. You can see the moon. There it is. And that's a waxing moon, right? About a week and a half to 10 days ago, the dark phase of the moon in May fell. And what happened then was, I'm sure you've heard over the last month or so the impala making a tremendous noise all over the game reserve while the males rut and chase their females into harems and fight each other. Now, when the moon goes dark, that's when the mating happens. So if you want to mate as an impala, what you need to do is make sure that you have corralled your females and make sure that you are still strong enough to keep them and not be chased off by other males for that period, because that's when the females will be most receptive to mating. Now, the crucial part of that, of course, is that they will then all birth at the same time 6.5 months later in late November, and when hopefully the rains come. It's an incredibly clever strategy, and while many other species will have a peak period during that time, none of them manage to flood the market so much with their babies. So their babies they'll probably lose up to 50% of their youngsters within the first year, but the rest of the 50 will survive quite well, and it's a very effective strategy for antelope survival. They also call impala the living fossil, which basically means it hasn't changed in the fossil record for many millions of years because its strategy is so successful. I also wanted to bring up, I don't know how many of you who were with us on the morning drive. For those of you in North America, most of you were probably sound asleep. We saw some elephants, and there was a question about whether or not, or what the age at which elephants stopped birthing was, and I said around probably 40 to 45 years. It would seem that there's a record from Wild Earth, actually. One of our viewers sent in a message to tell us that there was a 60-year-old elephant who was seen trying to give birth a while back, and she did eventually manage to, although she died a few days later, and her baby seems to have been adopted by the herd, which is a remarkable story. As we always say, the textbooks say one thing, and reality often says something entirely different. FC, you're going to have to go again with that. I can't copy you at all. There's some water up ahead here. So it would appear that despite the enormous heat, not much has come down to drink here. So we're going to head down a little further past the dam and further to the east, down to where you were with Brent this morning, and he found those lions. They did cross south out of the reserve, but there's a chance that they would have come back, so we'll head along that way and just see what we can find. Having a look at this tree here while we're driving along. I'm sure most of you from the regulars will know exactly what it is. Maybe not. So I shan't tell you just yet. If you'd like to have a guess, you can let me know. Look at the bark and look at the way the leaves grow. It's quite a common tree around here. But what's interesting about it is that the elephants we saw this morning wouldn't eat it actually at this age. I've never seen them eating this sort of tree at this age, but they were pulling out seedlings of the tree and eating it this morning, which was quite interesting. I can only assume that because of the density of the wood it becomes quite difficult to eat when it gets a bit older, like it is now. So anybody wish to hazard a guess as to what we are looking at there, please send me a message on hashtag Safari Live or questions at WildEarthTV. And I didn't tell you, behind the camera today we have Andrew. He's wrapped up a little less like a Michelin man today, given the volcanic heat we're experiencing. So Brent found the lions not too far from here earlier this morning. As I'm sure most of you know, lions do virtually nothing during the day. In fact, lions do virtually nothing most of the time. That is the thing that they do best. They are in competition with teenage humans as to the amount of sleep that can be fit into a 24-hour period. I tried to stump you with a tree yesterday. I'm going to try again right now. Now that I've stopped next to it, I'm not actually sure I know. I think I know what it is. Yes, I do. Phew. I told you about one of its relatives earlier this morning. You can eat the fruits, but it's not exactly the one that I told you about. That little fruit there will turn into something quite delicious come the summertime. Any guesses? Let me know. Tracks of buffalo on the road. Alright, I'm going to show you another tree. And this one, I'm sure lots of the regulars will know. It's one of the only ones that turns, that gives us some autumnal orange or pink. All the rest almost virtually universally go yellow rather than an autumnal red or pink or orange like you would get in Europe or in North America. So if you look here, you can see the shape is quite distinct, but what really makes this tree obvious is if you pick off a leaf like that, obviously it's not going to do it when I want it to. There we go. I'm not sure if you can see the little bit of white there.
Yes.
You can see the white? Great, well done. Andrew, that white is an extremely toxic latex, and if you eat it, I'm not going to really eat it. It'll either loosen your bowels to the extent that it's very unpleasant, or it can actually kill you. I had a tracker once whose name was Elvis. Elvis was about 125 kilograms of Shangaan beef. Tremendous tracker, and he used to purge himself using the tambuti leaf sort of twice a year. So every so often we'd arrive at game drive and my guests would sit on the back of the Land Rover and Elvis would be sitting there sweating, sweat pouring off him, and I'd say, Elvis, but what's wrong? What's happened? Are you ill? No, just time for tambuti, he'd say. Anyway, it can kill you if you don't know the doses like Elvis obviously did. I suspect the dose that would kill most of us wouldn't touch size on someone Elvis' size. And there are also stories of this tree. It's called a tambuti, by the way. There are also stories of that tree killing people who have been not foolish enough, but ignorant enough to cook on the wood. The smoke can infect the meat to such an extent that it will kill you. Crystal, thanks for answering the question on the tree that I asked. Unfortunately, you're going to have to go back to the books. It wasn't a weeping boerbean. I can see why you made the mistake. It was actually a leadwood, but it was a young leadwood, and they don't look very similar to the mature ones. But thanks very much for answering. While we carry on looking for the lions, we're going to move across to Scott, who seems to have something exciting to show you.
Welcome back, everyone, and we have made it to Buffalo's Hook Dam, and as you can see, there's a heron and some buffalo in that corner of the dam, and a lot more buffalo scattered out closer towards us in this western part of the dam. Now, these are all big old buffalo bulls, and it's not uncommon for them to come and congregate here during the hotter parts of these winter days, and they will vary up their waterholes where they do relax. So it was a pleasant surprise to find so many here this afternoon, and for some reason, I'm not too sure what it is, they have all got up and become quite active. Usually they're all lying down and inactive, but a few of them started sparring or kind of play fighting with one another. And there's also a few other birds around here, not just the heron. Another fish hunting bird that we are hoping is going to display its hunting tactics for us, as well as a lot of smaller birds called oxpeckers that will feed on the ticks and parasites that cover these buffalo. The other good news is we found some leopard tracks in this area, and we thought we'd just spend some time listening and watching these buffalo before we continue trying to establish where the leopard headed from the dam. The tracks could have been from between this morning's drive and now, but I'm not entirely sure because I wasn't out this morning. So the tracks did look quite fresh though, so good prospects for a little bit later on. And there's also some more good prospects, as there's two more buffalo bulls entering the equation here, and let's see how they are received by all the other boys that are already here. Oh, here we go. I'm not entirely sure what kind of a welcoming that is, but it appears peaceful. He's a really big old boy, the one that's just come down on the left. But at these drier times of the year, there may be a little bit of aggression around waterholes, and it's interesting because we've just got a question through from Heidi asking just about that fact. Do these waterholes dry up? Heidi's heard that some of the waterholes can have water pumped into them if need be, and that is true. So the animals in the Sabi Sands should never have a complete shortage of water, as the landowners do have the option and ability to decide when and how much water to pump in to any given waterhole. So these animals are quite fortunate, you could say. This waterhole, however, could dry up. It's hard to say what is going to happen. I know that Vuyatela Dam can have water pumped into it, or Gari Dam, but I'm not sure if this one actually has a borehole or a pump that can pump into it. Anyway, Heidi, there's lots of water around for the animals, as some of the waterholes in the Sabi Sands, or all of them really, are artificially made. And it is important to remember that although we are open to the Greater Kruger National Park, there are fences around three sides of our reserve, so some management of the land as well as the animals is performed in the Sabi Sands. It's a minimal impact or minimal changes that we as humans make, and these changes have been made for many, many years, and all the animals are still existing comfortably. And as you can see, this one right here is quenching its thirst with a African pied wagtail in the foreground. That's a bird we don't get to see very often. And they often do situate themselves around water and feed on aquatic invertebrates. And every now and then you'll see it does wag its tail, and that's how it gets the name the wagtail. There are other wagtails that we do get that are less commonly seen around water. Now, without further ado, I think we can leave these buffaloes to relax here at Buffelshoek Dam, and our plan is to now try and work out where this female leopard went. She was just behind us, below the dam wall, and we saw her tracks heading up towards where we are now. As I drove up, I lost her tracks on the road. I couldn't see them anymore, but that's not to say she isn't around here somewhere. So I'm looking forward to trying to read into whatever signs we can find of where she may have gone. She could very well be lying up under the shade of any of these bushes around us. They are fully aware of their skill and ability to be able to go unnoticed and undetected. And will often slink down to waterholes, which may be full of buffalo, and have a quick drink without any of the buffalo realizing. So So just to let you know exactly where tracks were heading, down to our right in the shade, the tracks were walking down the road, and I saw them right in the bottom of that dip or valley heading up towards where we are here. Now somewhere between there and here, her tracks have disappeared, or my ability to see them has disappeared. But there will be some clues and signs somewhere here telling us where she's gone to. What I'm planning on doing is just driving up this road and checking all the general areas to see if the tracks don't pop out. If we don't have any luck, then we may have to come back to the last tracks and get out on foot and see what we can find. It is a little bit tricky, though, with all these buffalo around, to be walking around. So I'm going to try and avoid that in the beginning. Now, the reason why we may not be able to see her tracks now is there's a few reasons. Other vehicles may have driven over the tracks. Animals could have walked on top of the tracks. As you can see, there's been a lot of buffalo coming to this waterhole. Or she could have simply just veered off the road. So that's where we're at. But thankfully at this time of the year, the roads are so dry and dusty that we can see very easily if an animal has walked down a road, because their paths are, or leave clear defined marks in a dry and dusty road, whereas a wet and hard road will provide us with less information. Good afternoon, Alice in Ohio, and thanks for sending your question through. Alice has asked if it ever rains in the winter, and that's a great question, especially seeing as though we've been chatting about the waterholes drying up. And it's unlikely for us to get rain in the next few months. We may get a few small downpours, but it is unlikely that we are going to get a lot of rain. Our rainy season is over our summer months, mainly November, December and January. So sadly, it's only going to get drier from now, and on top of that, we didn't get as much rainfall as we would usually get in our summer rainy season. We probably got about half of what we usually get. So it's an abnormally dry year, but again, it is normal for these drier years to come through every now and then. And what that will do is it'll make sure that any herbivores that have been hanging around for too long are then eliminated from the system, and it also provides predators with greater opportunities to feed and increase pride numbers. So dry periods, even though are difficult for the herbivores, provide for times of plenty for the carnivores, potentially. Now, I'm just going to hop out the vehicle, so excuse me for a few moments, but Brian will be panning around, and it'll also give you an opportunity to listen to how quiet and still it is at the moment. Again, it's still very hot, and the bush seems very sleepy, but that will change as it cools down. I'm just going to look for any of these leopard tracks. They could have headed off in any direction. I won't be long, and then we'll make another plan after that. Okay, well, by the process of elimination, we can assume, fairly safely assume, that the leopard did not come here. Now, ideally we would have information telling us where the leopard is actually headed, but a lot of the time when we are tracking animals, it is the process of elimination, working out where they haven't gone, and slowly working backwards from there. So, the plan now is to circle the block and drive on the roads that will take us to the closest possible areas where she was moving. Now, sometimes the roads work well for where tracks are heading, and other times there are no roads where you'd like them to be. So it is important to realize that there are big tracts of land where we cannot access very easily, and this is one of those areas. The area we're going to check now, she could well pop up, but the beauty of being out here is that as much as we like to think we know and understand about these animals, they will always surprise us. And hopefully the leopard is going to be hanging out somewhere where we're not expecting her, and she could very well have changed direction to drink. So by us doing this loop, we certainly not wasting our time. The beautiful thing about being out here is even though we may be tracking one leopard or one animal, we could bump into any given other animal along the way. Another leopard, a different species altogether. Making sure she didn't come out here. It doesn't look like she did. As you would have heard while I was off the vehicle, it's still very, very quiet. And again, it's not uncommon for the bush to be quiet when it's very hot and dry. And just like us humans, the animals make the most of the cooler, more pleasant hours of the day when they have the opportunity to. A bird that we don't get to see very often. We get to hear it fairly often, but I haven't showed you one in quite a while. It's just across to our right. Oh, there it goes. I was hoping we'd still be able to hear it call, but it flew off, let off two very short calls, and then that was that. But it was grey hornbill, which we, again, don't see very often, but we hear calling fairly often. Their call rings out, well, kind of like that, roughly. Very different to the other hornbills we hear. It's a high-pitched whistling call. Where's it, Brian? Oh, nice. Oh, Brian spotted a whole family of kudu. Well done, Brian. I'm thinking I'm going to loop ahead quite a big arch, just judging from the direction they're heading in and the speed they're heading in. I want to try and position us in an open clearing where it looks like they could pass through. So bear with us for a moment as we get into the perfect spot for us to enjoy the sighting. I think it's going to be a good one. There's a very big open clearing on our left here, which we are going to position ourselves in, and therefore hopefully watch this whole family of kudu walk past us. It's all working out very well so far. can now take you a little bit closer. They are such beautiful antelope, the kudu. You can notice a young male at the back there, with his horns beginning to protrude. They look a little bit clumsy when they're young, but when they become older, they become some of the most impressive antelope out here. The majestic males as well as the females. And they're about to pop into this open clearing. They seem like they're in quite a rush. I wonder where they're heading to. Maybe towards the dam where we've just come from. They've got those massive ears which are very characteristic of the kudus. You typically find them in thicker vegetation where they spend their time searching for leaves to feed on their browsers, so therefore tend to find themselves in more wooded vegetation. And those massive ears certainly do help them to hear and detect any predators that may be sneaking up on them. The rest of the family is coming trotting through now. And there's a few young calves which again are also very, very cute. Just got a very interesting question through from Nigel. Good afternoon, Nigel, and thanks for sending your question through. Nigel's heard that leopards will head back to their birthplace to die. Now, I'm not sure where you heard that from, Nigel. It's the first time I've ever heard of that, and I certainly have never witnessed or experienced any of that kind of behavior and would find it highly, highly unlikely. Leopards will tend to have to move away from their territories where they are born as they come of age and establish their own territory elsewhere. Females less so than males. Females may latch on or neighbor their mothers, so may not move very far, but males certainly will move very far potentially from where they are born, and it makes no sense for them to go back there to die. So it's the first that I've heard of, Nige, and it'll be interesting to hear what the other guides have to say about that, but again, I think it's highly unlikely that that happens. Well, wasn't that a beautiful, beautiful sighting of this family of kudu? And we got lucky because they were just approaching this little open clearing, which provided us with a perfect opportunity to watch them move through it. So I hope you enjoyed that. It really is so good to be back out here. Not that we were gone for long on leave, it was just 5 days. It's already so good to be back in this beautiful, beautiful environment. I was just scanning up in that tree that we drove past for any signs of a leopard. Could have actually been sleeping up there in the shade or have the kill hoisted up there. And over time you do begin to understand which trees are more likely to have a leopard sleeping in them than others. Anyway, we're going to cross over back to James and we will keep you updated on the leopard tracking. See you a bit later.
I suppose you got that bird, did you? Welcome back, everyone. Nice to have you with us again. I hope you saw some good stuff with Scott. We haven't found anything of tremendous note just yet. I was wondering if any of you had any feedback on this tree for me. If not, I hope you've chastised yourselves thoroughly. We're still on the way, on the lookout. We checked where those lions were this morning, and I'm afraid we couldn't. They've crossed south out of the boundary. So now we're on the trail. We're on a road called Ingwe Link. Ingwe is a word that means leopard in Shangaan and Zulu, interestingly. And so we're hoping to, we're in sort of Karula's core area, and that's what we're going to try and look for. We'll just see if we can find some tracks. You're going to have to go down with that. Let's just hope this is a waste of time. Here is an old skeleton. These make wonderful photographs, normally when silhouetted against a sort of classic African setting sun. This looks like an old knobthorn tree, which has, you know, they don't often survive to this height for that long because the elephants often push them over before they can get the size. I'm just going to feel it and just check that it isn't a leadwood. It might be. No, it's a knobthorn, definitely. Acacia nigrescens. That was what was probably being hit by that. We heard a bearded woodpecker this morning going ta 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 ta, and I'll just do it again for you now and pretend my fist is a sharp beak. So you can imagine the sound that must travel around the bush when it's done by a tiny sharp little beak on the end of a heavy head. Might even there's a little hole there. I don't think it's been excavated by much, but it may have had something living in it at one stage. Could well have been a barbet or a woodpecker or a lilac-breasted roller, any of the other hole nesting birds. Sorry about that. Okay. I think Brent had something to do with the construction of this road. I shall have a word with him when I return home.
Have a
look here. Well, this is quite nice. I'm just going to get a little bit forward. Okay. Now, I've spoken quite a lot about termites to you, and you being the plural of the word World Wide Web. This is an Acacia gerardii tree, or red thorn. We've seen a few of them like this that have been stripped by the elephants. And they strip off the bark and eat the inner cambium layer, which is the vascular tissue. And then the termites come, and this is a different species of termite here. You can see the tree's been covered by soil. And I wonder if there aren't, we might be able to find some termites. This isn't the most interesting thing. I'll show you what the most interesting thing is about this. Now this one seems to have been vacated already. So this is a different species of termite from the termites that that will build the mounds. But local people often eat this. And I've tried it many times. And every time I've found it utterly disgusting. It's supposed to be full of nutrients. You may as well go and lick the flower bed outside your house. Anyway, I'll keep persevering with local delicacies. Foul. Absolutely foul. Enid in Cape Town has answered a question, is it a marula tree? I think we're talking about this one that we found earlier. Enid, I'm afraid it is not a marula tree. So back to the drawing board for you, I'm afraid. It normally doesn't grow nearly as big as a marula tree, and it also has, I mean, it's almost impossible for you to do it without seeing the actual leaf and feeling it. And they've got tiny little thorns. And we spoke today about those sour worms. That should give you a bit of a clue as to what this might be. I've got a question here from MJ Bradley, who says, is there anything that has adapted to eating the tambuti leaves? I think that's what the question is. MJ, if that's your name, perhaps it's Michael or Marvin. I hope you're having a good day and enjoying this afternoon safari. There are indeed animals that can eat the tambuti leaves who are not affected by the sap. One of the most notable is the black rhino. They like to, that's actually one of their favorite foods. So it doesn't seem to affect their digestion at all. Another one that eats the sort of the bark at the base of the trees are porcupine. They seem to like tambuti quite a lot. And I haven't seen kudu eating them, but I know that kudu can eat euphorbia, which also contains high volumes of what would be very toxic latex to us, but to them is fine. So, yeah, there are lots of animals that can eat tambuti. It's mainly us, I think, that it affects. And I think I've had a note from Kathy here that says elephants can eat tambuti. They probably can. I've never seen it myself. but I imagine it would affect them. Kathy, if you've seen it, that's fantastic. So no ingwers on Ingwer Alley, which was the road, and we're going to continue up towards one of the water holes and see if anything's come down there. And anthelmintic is something, is a type of medicine that will cleanse the bowel of worms. And the roots, I think it's the roots, of Ambizia anthelmintica can be used to create some kind of a, some kind that will purge worms from the bowel. Oh, look at that impala, and if you can see it there, stotting across the plain. A little bit closer, where she's gone or why she's doing it. There she goes. Look at her run. It's called stotting behavior. Oh, we've got some monkeys alarm calling there. Okay, we're going to go quite quickly there. We've got monkeys alarm calling off to the northern side there. I'm going to drive along here and see what we can see. Quite often that impala will stot like that when they have seen a predator, but normally not without alarm calling first. And all the others look pretty calm. The monkeys are going crazy in there. There's a Nyala who doesn't look too perturbed, so I'm not sure what they could be. It could be a snake, it could be a bird, it could be a leopard. We're not going to be able to get down here, so I'm going to drive around over the dam. Well, we might be able to get down there, but we may end up with our noses in the mud. Here's the tree sample again. I'll put it there while I drive. So monkeys that are alarm calling, they've developed a sort of, language is quite a strong word, but they certainly can, they are able to differentiate in their alarm calls between different kinds of threats. So they've got at least 3 different kinds of threats, which would include snakes, birds, or ground-based predators like lions and leopards. And I can't tell. My ear isn't good enough to tell what they're calling about now. But the fact that the Nyala looked so relaxed indicates to me that it might be a snake or a bird, something that the Nyala wouldn't worry about. Hello, buffaloes. Unless the Nyala just doesn't know what a monkey alarm call is. Perhaps badly schooled. Sorry for driving so fast. I'm just trying to figure it out. MJ reckons it's a monkey orange tree. It isn't a monkey orange tree, I'm afraid. Just going to turn off here and listen. Okay, they're calling just down through this clearing. We're going to drive in. As far as I'm aware, people, that the tree is called a blue sour plum, Zymenia americana. Having said that, as I looked at it, that's what I thought it was initially. I'm not entirely convinced that I'm correct, so I'm going to check it for you, but I do think it's a Zymenia species of some kind. There's the monkey at the top of the tree there. I don't know if you can see him. It's definitely not a bird. He wouldn't be sitting at the top of the tree if he was about to be smacked by a crown eagle or something like that. He is looking down and to the right hand side. So it could be a python in the tree or a leopard somewhere else. Like I said, that Nyala looked very chilled, as does as does this one here. So I'm not convinced there's any major predator here. Let's just sit here for a little while and see if they don't call again. Vervet monkey, not velvet monkey. It is still calling, so I'm going to call. Sam, it is a sour plum tree. That's part of the Zymenia genus. I'm just not sure which sour plum it is. That is correct. Well done, Sam. I'm just going to try and... Okay, we're going to drive along the drainage line and see if we can't spot something. I don't think it's a snake either. Like I say, that Nyala is either profoundly stupid or there's nothing ground-based that could threaten him. I don't see any tracks. See if we can't get around the front here. This is round about where we had the Mvula male leopard the other day. Ow! Here's my elbow. More calling in there now. Looking down, where are they looking? I think we're in the wrong place here. I'm going to drive around. Seem to be looking off in that direction over there. So as soon as I can blast my way through this undergrowth, that's where we'll go. going to get through here, not without losing Andrew in the process. We did go through here the other day, so we'll try this route. Still there, Andrew?
We made it.
I'm sure you'll make this one. Quite amazing vehicles, these. Literally go anywhere. Just going to switch off and listen.
Join you.
Let's get around onto the road again. Definitely still very upset. Another Nyala looking very chilled. Susie Johnson, welcome to our afternoon game drive. You'd like to know if that monkey was or is alone. No, it's not. There are at least 5 or 6 vervets up in the tree there. I cannot see tracks of any predator. Everything else is looking very, very relaxed. Susie, we'll try and get you a shot of different monkeys. There's the one. In fact, you can just see them in the silhouette of that jackalberry tree. You can see them leaping around inside there. Still shouting. Hello Doris in Maryland, welcome to our afternoon game drive. Yes, Doris would like to know if I'd studied biology. I did. My first degree was in wildlife science, which included a lot of zoology and a lot of botany. I'm afraid I'm really confused as to what those monkeys are shouting at. I'll just wait here for a little while. We'll have a look at the buffalo there and just see if something doesn't pop out. It's very odd. And while we're sitting here enjoying this buffalo, as he enjoys his quiet afternoon repose, please remember we love to hear from you. Questions or answers or comments at #SafariLive or questions at WildEarth.tv. It's really bizarre. The only other thing to do is to go and sit underneath that tree and see if we can't find the snake. The other possibility, of course, and this is a less savoury one, is that the monkeys were raiding in the camp just there, and somebody may have flung something at one of them, and so they've skedaddled up the tree from where they're shouting at the person who tossed something at them. And given the calmness of every other organism in the area, I think that's well possible. Beautiful, peaceful afternoon scene. Very soporific. And you can see the weaver's nests there. That isn't a weaver. Actually can't see what that looks like. It's a water thickney. Ridiculous name. Better than its old name, which used to be the water thick head. Neither of them are particularly explicable. Right, apparently some of you saw the bones of the carcass we drove past just now, and you'd like to know a bit more about it. That's a great idea. We'll go and have a look just behind us now. As far as I'm aware, that's a buffalo carcass. I guarantee you there's one of you who can tell me exactly what happened to that buffalo. And probably give me its life history. It was just up here, unless I'm much mistaken. There it is. It was not going to take a Sherlock Holmes to figure out what died here. So this is a buffalo. It is in fact dead now, in case you hadn't noticed. What is quite interesting about this, though, is that it looks to me like the hyena population of the area, whenever this was killed, probably wasn't that healthy, because there's a lot. It's very unusual that you would find this number of bones. I mean, there's almost a complete. Well, it's not quite, but there are substantial pieces of the skeleton that are still intact. It'd be great to know if any of you know what happened to this buffalo and how it died. I'm pretty sure if it was killed, it would have been killed by lions, and then the bones would have been torn apart like this by hyenas, and the jackals, maybe if there were a few, would have come in and taken a few scraps, and the vultures would have had the rest. I'd love to go and pick up a few pieces, but I'm not going to do that. There is always a danger, especially in winter time, that anthrax spores, which occur naturally in this area every so often, and you'd find them in old bones like this. So we generally stay away from touching bones. Chances are very small, but any chance of getting anthrax is obviously one you want to avoid, it being a particularly unpleasant way to go. Obviously quite an old kill. If we can we zoom in on the horns there, Andrew? Now, if you look at the horns, you can see a couple of. I'll go and point them out with my foot. Or a piece of grass. See them better here, actually. This isn't a bone, so I'm going to pick it up. There you can see what has eaten away the keratin on the top of the skull there of that buffalo. And it's a kind of a moth, and the larva goes into the keratin here and creates the chrysalis or pupa from the keratin, pupates, and then flies out. And it's called a horn moth. And they do this mainly on buffalo horns, but they'll do it anywhere where they can find this sort of relatively soft keratin. That's how thick the layer of keratin is on the top of a buffalo's head. It's quite impressive, really. You wouldn't like to be hit by that. Head harder than an NFL helmet. Okay. Right. Let us press on. The monkeys have stopped alarm calling, so I suspect quite strongly that they had incurred the wrath of one of the camp staff there, and he had put them to flight. Right, I'm plugged in and ready to go. John in California, welcome to the afternoon drive that is slowly becoming the sunset drive. You'd like to know what kind of fish we find in these water holes. Well, we find mainly catfish, or what we call barbel, so what you'd call a catfish, and sometimes we find tilapia, which is a sort of, I think it's a kind of a bream, but mainly just the catfish. It's always fascinated to me as to how they get into these water holes, given that they're not really fed by live rivers. So, and I'm not sure what the answer is. The only answer I can come up with is that their eggs must be either transferred in flash floods or by bird droppings. So we're going to pass across here and head up to the clearings to the west of us, where we saw the elephants this morning. and see if we can't pick up some tracks there. Soporific scene here. All these old weavers' nests here. Yeah, and I think you asked a question about old weavers' nests. I'm not really sure on what reference it was, but these are probably spotted back weavers' nest, and they may be reconstituted or re-inhabited when the summer comes. They'll be repaired and fixed, but otherwise the birds will build new ones. There's nothing in them now, so the weavers will roost probably just in tree branches when they're not breeding. And then in the summertime, when they've got little babies to raise, they'll raise them in those rather snug looking nests. If I was a bird, I'd quite like to be a weaver. I think I'd probably spend the winter in my nest too. Some doves in the background there, Cape turtle doves. We've got another good question here. What